Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rodney Hakim from the New York Shakespeare social media feeds, and I thank you for joining us here tonight on our deep dive discussion with the creators of the hit off-Broadway show, Romeo and Bernadette. We have joining us tonight, Mark Saltzman and Justin Ross Cohen, respectively the writer and the director slash choreographer of the hit off-Broadway show, which is now a New York Times Critic's Pick. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
Hello. Okay, so we were supposed to have Mark and Justin join us a week ago on Monday the 6th when we had our Instagram Live interview program. And unfortunately, we had just a cavalcade of technical issues that night, and we just couldn't get either one of these gentlemen connected. So to make up for that and to go even a step beyond that, we have both of them here in a Zoom session right here, right now, and it is all about Romeo and Bernadette. We're going to learn the inside scoop about this fantastic show from the writer and the director. So Mark and Justin, Romeo and Bernadette, Mark, you wrote this thing. When did this thing come about? Is this what's on stage right now? But before we even get into the details, for viewers of the New York Shakespeare social media channels, Mark and Justin and their team were so kind as to give me a special discount code just for tonight's program. And that is if you go to romeoandbernadette.com, you plug in the discount code Brooklyn 39. That's going to give you $39 tickets, and that is for a fantastic show, which I can't wait to see. I might be using that myself, hint, hint. Okay, so let's get back into business. Mark and Justin, you guys have put together this fantastic show. When did this all come about? And is the staging that's happening right now the first time it's been around, or was it around before that?
Oh, it's been around. We had a production in 2003 at Paper Mill Playhouse, and sometimes it takes that long to get from New Jersey to New York. There's a lot of traffic on the bridge,
right?
But really, it went to sleep kind of the way Romeo does in the show, and Justin was the prince. They gave it a kiss and brought it back to life.
So just to fill in the audience who might not have an awareness of what the general plot of the show is about, what you've done with Romeo and Bernadette is you've taken the Romeo and Juliet story and you've turned it into a musical comedy where Romeo falls asleep, as you mentioned, in his era, in the Elizabethan era, and he wakes up in modern day Brooklyn. And instead of his fair Juliet, he finds Bernadette, who is a mobster's daughter, if I understand the summary correctly.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this has been around, in different off-Broadway or let's say regional areas since 2003, and then it kind of took a long slumber for a while. So after that long slumber, what happened? How did it come back?
I had the good fortune to take a class on writing for musical theater with Mr. Mark Saltzman. And at the end of the class, I had a scene or two of the first act of a musical, and a great respect for this gentleman who surprised me one day, called me up and said, "Hey, would you be interested in taking a look at anything in my trunk?" And I knew of Mark's past successes. And I'd gotten to experience the man for, a couple of months. And I was very honored. And there were a few things in the in that little catalog that I was interested in. But the one that spoke to me the greatest was Romeo and Bernadette. And as a dancer, my career started as a classical ballet dancer. I tend to hear things in rhythms. First, the rhythm of the word, and then the rhythm of the emotions that the word is expressing. And much like Mr. Shakespeare, Mr. Saltzman has an extraordinary affinity for the use of the English word, both technically and emotionally. So I was just blown away when I read it, and it was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm also from Brooklyn,
Yeah,
so I had a lot of, but it just made me laugh. The script, when a script, without even hearing the music, which is off the charts, and I'll let Mark talk about that. But just the script, to get a script as a director, and you're sitting there and you're laughing out loud, it was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we had some meetings and, started to collaborate. And here we are.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So that's that. But let's just jump back a second. So, Mark, you had done it regionally at Paper Mill Playhouse in 2003. At what point do you conceive of the play? And once you come up with the germ of the idea, how long does it take to get it all on paper, get the script together, add the lyrics, what's that whole process like for you?
Well, I come out of television, so they teach us how to write fast, or else you're just not in that part of the business. If you can't, like, you're on a set and something's not working, you just have to do it right then and there. You can't go up to your cabin and think about it for the weekend. So, right, that's been the quickest part of the process for me, is writing. Lyrics go slower because it's like doing a crossword puzzle. It's doing embroidery rather than painting the wall with a wide brush. But I think the first germ, because people have been asking me that, and I've really been kind of going back, and it was the idea of, I always loved the Godfather movies, even number 3, maybe especially, and the 5 families in Godfather, and it's Italian, like Romeo and Juliet, and I started playing around with the idea of a Romeo and Juliet story from 2 different mob families, which I still can't believe doesn't exist. I mean, it's 50 years of The Godfather.
Right.
And I started making notes, and I just called the guy Romeo, and just kind of, well, here's the way it would go. And I wanted it to have a happy ending, unlike Romeo and Juliet, kind of, well, this is Shakespeare, New York. The way the comedies end in happy.
Right, in the Gamos, the multiple marriages.
Even multiple marriages, yeah.
Right.
And so I knew it was going to take that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time I just went to the screen and saw Romeo. I just saw the placeholder named Romeo, and I kind of, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's Romeo. And so it wasn't Tony from West Side Story, wasn't transformed into a modern person. It was sitting in front of me, giving me the idea that my Romeo would be Shakespeare's Romeo, transported to another era. And somehow I had to get him in with a mob family and have Juliet be in the opposing family. So that was, that took a little rejiggering, but it does end up happy, and unlike Romeo and Juliet, and more like As You Like It, or
Sure. So timing wise, I'm trying to recall, was this before The Sopranos became the big deal that became on TV?
Yeah, it was. It was before The Sopranos, because I remember watching that thinking, I want to steer clear of The Sopranos, even though nothing replaces The Godfather in my heart, but The Sopranos were getting close, and that was North Jersey. And I think, now that you mention it, I think The Sopranos were on when we opened, because Paper Mill happens to be in North Jersey, and a lot of people writing about the show, made that reference that, Tony Soprano would enjoy this. And,
okay.
Okay.
So you're kind of tapping into the zeitgeist. No, I think around that time there was also, right before the Sopranos, there was the Analyze This movies with Billy Crystal. So it's kind of like what's in the ether, what's in the zeitgeist about,
even right now, the Offer is on Paramount, about the making of The Godfather. So this this somehow arrived deep in American myth with a capital M. People, politicians call each other Fredo, and
Right.
and it requires no explanation.
Right.
It'd be like saying George Washington or something. These are
Right.
just icons in American culture now.
Okay, all right. So you put together the text, and then little by little you added the lyrics. You get up to do the original staging. It goes to sleep. Later on, Justin helps you rediscover it. So you guys have the text. You're confident that this needs to be brought back to life.
Yeah.
How do you go from page to stage? What's the process? Practically speaking, of okay, we have this. Who's going to produce it? What house are we going to get? Is it going to be an Off-Broadway? Is it going to be Broadway? Walk us through the process of how that all works out.
You act as if there's some system. It's pure chaos and random universe. It's being inside a Jackson Pollock painting. And every project has a different saga. Do you know that for in a movie studio, at least there's a conveyor belt, especially the old studios, and that's how a movie got made. But when you're trying to get a musical on, it's truly chaos. You hope for the best. What did you see? Tick Tick Boom? Have you seen?
No, I didn't, but I know that's a big one.
Because that I never thought this process. It's so boring and so tedious and so soul numbing. I thought, well, this could never be dramatized in a movie. But leave it to Lin-Manuel. That process of having to call every person who could possibly contribute and ask actors for favors and all that is right there on the screen, and it's grueling. It's work. That's why we call it work. It's sales, it's telemarketing, it's coaxing and praying, and
the greatest. I'm sorry, Mark. I think the greatest mistake that creators make is to rush something before it is ready, certainly for prime time. But even when you are getting a property together that particularly, with the case of Romeo and Bernadette, so it had had a production 10 years earlier. Mark put it away. He took it out. I looked at it. We started working on it before we had our first public reading. And it wasn't a reading for the public. It was a reading for our nearest and dearest, who, promised to laugh and just energy in the room. But I already knew that, I could tell, and the proof was in the pudding. He had a production. So, we were some steps ahead already, but there were still, numerous edits, numbers were cut, scenes were rewritten, and that process continued up until just a few weeks ago when, Mark was here for our rehearsal period. And, because, well, certainly Shakespearean lovers would know that the world turns on a word, on a syllable, so especially in comedy. And so trying to find those beats, we continue to work on it. And I saw the show yesterday, and the actors are finding these characters in a way that only an actor who can take the time, who has the time to really understand who they're embodying. If you do Hello Dolly, that there's going to be a staircase and she's going to be in a red dress. But this wasn't that. This was creating a musical from scratch. And, there are so many people that Mark and I owe debts of gratitude who gave of their time for readings. And then we went back to the drawing board. Never was it like, okay, we've got to cut the first act. It was always, in great shape like that, but still. And I just would like to just, say to anybody who's a writer out there and hasn't had a production, doesn't have the team behind them, take your time, because when you invite your friends to a reading and there are 50 of them, that's when you're going to get them, you know? So really just let it breathe. Give the piece time to breathe.
Just for, since we're talking to fellow writers out there, the idea that there is a right way or a wrong way, I must be doing this the wrong way. I mean, that's kind of soul deadening too. There really isn't. All you can do is, try to get people in front of it and see if you're moving them or making them laugh or getting the effect that you want, and hope for the best.
So you're talking about the evolution of the show once it's up on stage, and how it lives and breathes, and little things change and the actors grow into their roles. And so how long of a run have you guys had with this current production?
With this current production, you mean like when? Well, it goes back a while. I was living in Los Angeles, and I'm a native New Yorker, and it was time to come home. And I had this show that I had been developing with Mark for a number of years, and I just knew it was time. It was time for New York. There were people in Los Angeles who were interested in producing it, but they were looking at it like with a spreadsheet. And there aren't big enough theaters in Los Angeles, sadly, to accommodate it. So, they really couldn't see the forest for the trees. And I thought, enough, I'm going home. And I hit the streets, and I met with many people. And one of them was Donna Trinkoff of the Amas Musical Theater. And she decided to produce what's called in the Equity Union, a 29-hour reading workshop. So the team gets 29 hours, and you have to subtract the time that it takes to present it. So if you decide, as we did, to present it to 3 different audiences, that was 2.5 hours each. So I got like a little over 20 hours with the actors to learn all the music. Wow. And they didn't have to memorize the script. They were on script, but yes, to learn all of that and then block it so that the audience isn't falling asleep, because it's a reading. And from that, Donna produced a bigger production at Art New York, and Eric Krebs came on board and said, I really see this potential. And we sold out 5 weeks at this beautiful space, Art New York. If you don't know it, check it out on 10th Avenue and 52nd. And then it was such a hit that Eric decided to move it to a larger theater on Theater Row. And the sets were moved and the costumes were moved, and everybody took a couple of weeks of a breather, and we got back into the theater, and 3 days in, announced that we're shutting down. So, by the grace of God, it's now 2 years later. The cast stuck with us. Every single member of the original production is in this production. And we have 5 marvelous understudies, some of whom have already gone on. Thank God, no COVID. Thank God.
No COVID. No
other, little schwitz schmonz. And
it's a turned ankle.
What's that?
A turned ankle.
Yes, turned ankle.
Very mild.
Turned ankle. So it's a great group, and the audiences are loving it. And it's a very exciting thing to have it realized. All of our visions of, of having it in front of a sophisticated New York audience, and they're big in it.
That's fantastic. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to in these forums, and it's people who have had a show that was about, literally it was opening night and it got canceled because of COVID.
Yes.
So and you guys seem like you were a very similar experience to that. So when you come back after 2 years, after the extended layoff due to COVID, and thankfully the cast that stuck with you and the larger space that you had procured is still there, what changes in mounting the production? Do you have extra safety protocols? Do you change some of the staging to keep actors a little bit more distant from each other to prevent transmission? What effects does all that have?
Sure. Well, gratefully, none of that had to happen because of all of the safety protocols that are in place. Everyone was getting tested. I think first it was daily, then it was every other day, then it's twice a week. There is a COVID monitor at the theater when they come in. So if it's not a day where they had to have gotten tested, then they get their temperature taken, but the PCR results from the day before are all hopefully, so everybody's been cool. And
so what about the audiences? I know that this is a big hot button thing right now. The theaters until now have maintained the mask requirements for audiences, and we're just kind of on the precipice of maybe some of them won't require it. Maybe it'll be optional. What's the story for you guys?
Well, personally, I feel very protective of my company and of the people that are coming to the theater, because not everybody wants to go to the theater or feels safe enough to go to the theater. And I get it. We all have our level of comfort, and this is an unprecedented time in the history of the world. So people are rocking and rolling in their head, it's all over the place. So I would like for anyone who does say, I heard this show was fun, I want to go have a good laugh and hear some beautiful singing, will go, okay, I'm going to do it and feel safe enough. So yes, right now, they do have to wear a mask, and gratefully, nobody has gotten psycho on us about it. But should the government regulate that you no longer have to, well, then I think it's going to be, oh God, I hate to even say it, but it feels like it could be a death knell for theater at this time, because everybody's hurting so badly to try to stay open, and you want everyone to be safe.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look at another Shakespeare that's playing on Broadway, you're looking at the Macbeth with Daniel Craig and Ruth Negga, directed by Sam Gold. I think in one of the performances about a month or so ago, Sam Gold himself had to jump on stage and take over for an actor who was out due to COVID. So it's not like COVID is gone. It's very much there, and new variants of Omicron are just being discovered. So absolutely, caution is the name of the game. Okay, so guys, you have now, I think it's about 2.5 to 3 weeks left. Your run ends on, I think it's June 26th. Let me look at my notes. June 26th.
Yes.
Okay, and you have, let's see, we have Tuesdays, double on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, double on Saturday, and Sunday, your only night off being Mondays.
It's a Sunday matinee.
Sunday matinee, that's right.
Perfect day to bring your mother.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Show and then take her out. If it was 20, 30 years ago, Mark, we would have said, and take them out to Mama Leone's.
Mama Leone's, yeah.
Now, you got to find a different Italian place. But
so now, you've gone through all the challenges of getting this thing, birthing this thing, raising this thing, getting it on stage, getting it through the COVID ups and downs. It's there. It's audiences are loving it. The critics are loving it. It's a New York Times critics pick. Now you're approaching the end of this, long gestation period and this whole process. As you approach the end of the run on June 26th, what happens next? Is it that, like some of the other people we've spoken to, that, okay, we're going to take a break and then we're going to see about touring, or we're going to release a cast album, or whatever? What's next for you guys?
Mark?
A meeting about that with our producers. And maybe you should be there.
Well, I have an idea. We'll make it a New York Shakespeare exclusive.
and on Zoom. But that's, everyone involved right now has a theory and a trajectory because we're doing so well, and some of it has to do with, well, what larger theaters would be available now, or do we wait? Or is a tour the way to go? It's kind of, even where we're sitting now with 2.5 weeks to go, everything you said is a possibility, and now it's everybody putting their heads together and figuring, well, which is do we go to London next? What happens?
Right, kind of the reverse of what Six did. Six started in London and came to New York next.
Correct. Yeah, that's one of the shows. I think they closed on their opening night. I think that's Broadway.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yes.
Exactly right.
One. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So gentlemen, aside from everything you've told us thus far, what else can you tell us? We all have experienced the comedic musical theater version of Shakespeare. We've all seen Kiss Me Kate. We've all seen, some of the things. A couple of years ago, there was a wonderful production called Desperate Measures that got a lot of attention at that time from a friend of ours, Pat Addis. She did that show. What can you tell the audience is what is going to really make them really want and need to see your show?
You brought me up cold with that. I would say for your audience, since it's Shakespeare, New York Shakespeare, sorry. It's not just an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. It's full of a basket of Easter eggs just for Shakespeare geeks like us. If I rattle them off, I mean, they're not like selling points, so the PR people wouldn't tell me no, that's not going to bring in.
Well, Mark, why don't you name a couple of composers that you chose?
Well, no, I was thinking of our characters. Like, if I said Enzo Illyria, is our opera singer, and Illyria from Twelfth Night,
Sure.
and our hideously sadistic dance teacher is Violovich.
So you have a lot of smart references for the Shakespeare fans out there, but it's humorous enough for the whole family.
Yeah, and these fly by, and there'll be nights when I'll hear 3 laughs and those are my people. They got that because it's in the middle of a line or something. These kinds of the Romeo and Juliet thing is there, of course, but you mentioned Taming of the Kiss Me Kate, another big influence because Bernadette is a terrible, spoiled little entitled brat. She's a princess at the beginning, and sound familiar, and Italian, like our Kate, and it's funny because Taming of the Shrew is very sort of delicate and dicey at this moment. I don't think it gets produced much, but this version that the taming of the Mafia Princess, I don't think we got any kind of negative feedback about basically her learning to follow her heart and what romance was, other than something useful, getting married because it's going to be a good step. So that's a little bit more subtle, but for the Shakespeare fans, I think this is just a candy box. And don't we all love Romeo and Juliet? Don't we wish that they would have been happy together?
Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Maybe I think it was last year, one of the companies in town did a very seldom seen reconfiguration of King Lear that had a happy ending where Lear didn't die and Cordelia was saved. So maybe that was neoclassical. They did the Nahum Tate happy ending version of King Lear.
Yeah. That was the style once, I think, in the 19th century with Shakespeare.
Exactly.
Palatable. because he was such a bummer with all these portraits.
With all the kids dying, and so
Yeah,
that's exciting that we have a happy ending, a happy resolution to Shakespeare.
And you know, I think happy is a very good word to think about, like when you ask, you know, why, how would I, you know, try to get somebody to come see it, what would I suggest? I would suggest that if you really do want to feel happy and smart, it is a show that was inspired by Shakespeare. And at least since Mark gave me a phone call, there's elements of Bugs Bunny and the Three Stooges and Lucy and Ethel and Hullabaloo and Ann Miller. And, you know, it's like, I think the beauty of the piece is that we don't take ourselves that seriously, because the seriousness and the intent is in the writing. You know, if you play a spoof and you think you're smarter than, you know, than the room, then what do you need me here for? So everyone, and I'm so grateful for my cast because a lot of them are younger. You know, we've got some kids right out of, Romeo was a singing waiter when we hired him. Bernadette had literally like graduated the week before in upstate New York, moved to an apartment in Astoria on Friday, and on Monday came and auditioned and booked, you know, the lead in it.
Wow.
It really does happen.
We have numerous stories like that, but they get the beauty of the language, the beauty of the posture, and sometimes the posture, you know, is like a, you know, a ne'er-do-well from a Shakespearean, you know, play. But in our case, you know, it's 1960, but the body language, the beauty of the language, it's a great gift, and audiences are digging it. And again, you know, we're laughing with you. So that's the real, I'm very pleased about that people are having a good time. And I mean, who doesn't know Romeo and Juliet? I guess if it was like one of Shakespeare's more obscure plays, you know, and make a musical out of it, well, you know.
Well, listen,
here we come. But, you know, this is for fun and love. I see couples like put their arms around each other at moments in the show, the right moments, you know, where the couples are up there singing about trying to understand love and what is love. And then suddenly you see this, you know, 75-year-old couple just he kind of creakily puts his arm around. It's beautiful. It's just
fantastic. Oh, it sounds fantastic to me, and I can't wait to bring my family to come see it. So, gentlemen, one more time, I'll throw out the plug for the special discount you guys have so generously provided. Let me get that out straight. Provided to the New York Shakespeare audience, and that is if you go to RomeoandBernadette.com and you plug in the discount code Brooklyn39, you're going to get $39 tickets. The run ends on June 26th. So I urge you guys, New York Shakespeare fans, get out and see this show before it ends. I sure will. And Mark Saltzman and Justin Ross Cohen, thank you so much for lending us your time and insights tonight. We can't wait to come see the show. Yes.
And if you wear a cod piece, you get an extra $5 off. Cheers.
I think we have the definitive cod piece gag. I know there's been many, but I think we may cap them all.
All right, guys, we're just about out of time. So we will bid our farewells. Thank you both so much for being with us here tonight. I can't wait to see the show. RomeoandBernadette.com.
Yes, thanks so much, Rodney. All right,
Take care.
Bye-bye.